I should be honest, at least with myself. I never thought he had it in him to break. Mark, I mean. My husband. Ex-husband now. But we'll get to that. My name is Chloe. I'm 34 years old. And when this whole thing started, I was what you'd call comfortable. We had the house in the suburbs, the one with the gray siding and the perfectly manicured lawn that Mark obsessed over every Saturday. We had 2 kids, Liam, who was 7, and Sophie, who was 5. The perfect little family unit. Mark was the anchor. That's how everyone saw him. Solid. Dependable. He was a senior project manager for a massive logistics firm. He wore a suit, he left at 7:30 every morning, and he came home at 6:30 every evening. His life was a timetable. A predictable, safe, boring timetable. And me? I was the color, the spark, the one who remembered that life was meant to be lived, not just managed. I planned the spontaneous weekend trips he'd grumble about but secretly love. I filled the house with laughter and friends and good wine. I was the one who made our life look like something you'd see on Instagram. Because, well, it was. My blog, La Vie de Chloe, had a decent following. Nothing huge, but enough to get me free skincare products and a sense of importance. Our dynamic worked. Or so I thought. He provided the canvas, and I painted the picture. But for a few months, the canvas had started to feel gray. Mark would come home, drop his leather briefcase by the door with a heavy sigh, and the mood in the house would instantly drop 10 degrees. He'd talk about work, and I swear to God, it was like listening to a foreign language. Synergies, KPIs, stakeholder management. My eyes would glaze over. I'd nod and say, "Oh wow, that's crazy," while scrolling through my phone, looking at pictures of my friend Amelia's trip to Santorini. That's what life was supposed to look like. Blue water and white wine. Not spreadsheets and corporate jargon. Then came the day. A Tuesday, in early November. He came home at 3 in the afternoon. 3. That was the first alarm bell. Mark had never come home at 3 in his life. I was in the kitchen, unboxing a new espresso machine I'd ordered. A beautiful, chrome thing. It was an impulse buy, I'll admit. But I'd convinced myself it was an investment in our home's happiness. He walked in, and he looked hollow. His face was pale, his tie was loosened, and his eyes were just empty. I thought he was sick. "Mark? What's wrong? Are you okay?" I asked, my voice light, playful. He just stood there in the doorway, staring at the new machine on the counter. He didn't even seem to register it. "They let me go," he said. His voice was flat, devoid of any emotion. I laughed. "I know how that sounds, but you have to understand. This was Mark, Mr. Job Security, the guy who had a 10-year plan. The idea of him getting fired was like saying the sun had decided to rise in the west. It was absurd." "Very funny," I said, turning back to the machine. "Help me figure this thing out. The instructions are in Italian or something?" He didn't move. "Chloe, I'm serious. My whole department was eliminated. Restructuring." I stopped. I turned around slowly. The smile faded from my face. He wasn't joking. The look in his eyes? It was fear. Pure, uncut fear. And my first thought? My very first gut reaction? It wasn't sympathy. It was anger. A hot, furious wave of it. How dare he? How dare he let this happen? To us? To me? Right before the holidays? The words just tumbled out of my mouth before I could stop them. "Well," I said, crossing my arms, my voice dripping with a sarcasm I couldn't contain. "I guess this means you'll finally have time to fix that leaky faucet in the guest bathroom, huh? Big mistake." "Hugo." He just stared at me. The fear in his eyes was replaced by something else. Something colder. It was a look I'd never seen before. It was the look of a man seeing his wife for the very first time. And he didn't like what he saw. Is that really the first thing you have to say to me?" he whispered. I got defensive. Of course I did. "What do you want me to say, Mark? That it's all going to be okay? We both know that's a lie. What are we going to do? What about the mortgage? The kids' school? Christmas is in 6 weeks." The words were sharp, little daggers, and I threw every single one of them right at him. He just flinched. "I don't know," he said, his voice cracking. I just thought you might." He didn't finish. He didn't have to. "I just thought you might care." He picked up his briefcase, the one I suddenly hated. the symbol of the stability he had just lost. He walked past me, up the stairs, and I heard our bedroom door click shut. I stood there in the kitchen, my heart pounding. The shiny new espresso machine suddenly looked ridiculous, an obscene monument to a life that had just ended. My phone buzzed on the counter. It was a text from Julian. Spin class at 7? Julian was my trainer at the ridiculously expensive gym I belonged to. He was 6'2", carved out of granite, and had a smile that could melt glaciers. He was everything Mark wasn't. Carefree, exciting, and, from the Porsche he drove, very, very successful. We flirted. Harmlessly. Mostly. I looked at the text. Then I looked up the stairs toward the closed bedroom door, and for the first time, I didn't feel like I was just flirting. I felt like I was weighing my options. The silence in the house for the next few days was a living thing. It was thick and suffocating. It sat between us at the dinner table. It lay in the empty space in our king-sized bed. Mark was a ghost. He'd drift from room to room, his phone in his hand, endlessly scrolling through job sites. He spoke only when spoken to, and his answers were clipped. Short. "How was your day?" I'd ask. "Fine." "Do you want to watch a movie?" "No." He was punishing me. That's how I saw it. He was being dramatic, trying to make me feel guilty for one little comment. I mean, yes, he lost his job. It was terrible. But did the world stop spinning? No. We still had savings. He'd find something else. He always did. This whole performance, it was exhausting. And frankly, it was beneath him. I hate feeling like I'm in the wrong. It's a physical discomfort, a knot in my stomach. And the easiest way to untie that knot isn't to apologize. God, no, that's admitting defeat. The easiest way is to do something so grand, so undeniably thoughtful, that the other person is forced to forget why they were mad in the first place. It's manipulation, I guess. But it's effective. That's when I remembered the watch. For months, Mark had been obsessed with this watch. A Navitimer. Some ridiculously complex pilot's watch with a blue face and a million tiny dials. He'd watch YouTube reviews of it like a teenage boy watching. Well, you know, he'd leave the tab open on his laptop. He talked about it like it was the Holy Grail. "One day, Chloe," he'd say, "when I close the Henderson deal, that'll be my reward." He never closed the Henderson deal. And now there were no deals. But the idea took root in my mind. If I bought him that watch, it would fix everything. It would be a gesture, a symbol. It would say, "I believe in you. I know you'll bounce back. You are still the man I married." It wouldn't just be a watch. It would be a shot of confidence delivered in a velvet-lined box. And if he was happy, then he couldn't be mad at me anymore. And I wouldn't have to say the words, "I'm sorry." There was just one problem. The watch cost $4,700. Our savings were off limits. Mark had been very clear about that. "Emergency fund only," he'd said, his voice tight. But then I remembered the credit card. The American Express Platinum. Technically, it was his card, from his old corporate account. But I was a named user. He never checked the statements. It was my secret weapon. My little fund for the things I needed. A facial, a new pair of boots, lunch with the girls. In my head, the logic was flawless. This wasn't a frivolous purchase. This was an investment. An investment in my husband's ego. An investment in our marriage. An investment in peace and quiet. So I did it. I went online, found the exact model, and clicked "Buy Now." I typed in the credit card number, my heart doing a little nervous flutter. That total was a lot. But I imagined his face when he opened the box. The shock. The gratitude. The way he'd look at me. It would be worth it. The confirmation email arrived less than a minute later. "Thank you for your purchase." I felt a giddy rush of relief. Problem solved. Less than an hour later, I was in the living room, pretending to read a magazine, when I heard his voice from the upstairs office. It wasn't a yell. It was something much, much worse. It was a low, dangerous growl. "Chloe, what the hell is this?" My blood ran cold. I knew. I knew instantly. He must have gotten a fraud alert on his phone. I walked up the stairs slowly, composing my face into a mask of casual innocence. "What's what, honey?" He was standing in the middle of the office, his phone held out in his hand like it was a piece of evidence at a crime scene. On the screen, in big bold letters, "Transaction alert. $4,7 dollari." Zero at Chrono Jewelers. Are you out of your mind? He said, his voice shaking with a rage I had never witnessed before. I just told you. I just told you we have nothing coming in. We have to watch every single penny. And you go out and buy, he squinted at the screen. A $4,700. What? What did you buy, Chloe? This was my moment to explain. My grand gesture. It's the watch, I said, trying to sound excited, like I was revealing a wonderful surprise. It's your Navitimer, Mark. I got it for you. To cheer you up, he laughed. It was a horrible sound, bitter and sharp. Cheer me up? He repeated, taking a step closer. You think spending money we don't have is going to cheer me up? I lost my job, Chloe. The foundation of our entire life just cracked. And your response is to throw gasoline on the fire? But you wanted it. I shot back, my voice rising. Don't act like I went out and bought myself a diamond bracelet. I did this for you. For me? He jabbed a finger at his own chest, his eyes wide with disbelief. For me? You did this so you wouldn't have to feel guilty. You thought you could buy your way out of being a decent human being for 5 minutes. You thought a shiny toy would make me forget that my wife laughed when I told her my world was falling apart. That hit a nerve. Don't you dare, I warned, pointing a finger back at him. Don't you stand there and act like you're some kind of saint. You're mad because you lost control. That's all this is. Control? He yelled, his voice finally breaking. You think I like being the only one who worries? The only one who has to balance the books every month while you just swipe, swipe, swipe? I'm trying to keep this family from sinking, and you're drilling holes in the bottom of the boat. He was breathing hard, his face flushed. He looked at me, and all the anger seemed to drain out of him at once, replaced by a profound, heartbreaking exhaustion. You just don't get it? He said quietly. You never have. Ever. He pushed past me, grabbing his car keys from the dresser. Where are you going? I asked, a knot of panic tightening in my chest. Out. Mark, don't just walk away. We need to talk about this. He stopped at the bedroom door, his back to me. No, Chloe, he said, his voice weary. You need to talk. I need to breathe. And then he was gone. The front door slammed shut, rattling the pictures on the wall. I stood there, alone in the silence of the big, empty house. And I wasn't sorry. I was furious. How dare he speak to me like that? How dare he twist my grand gesture into something ugly? It wasn't my fault. None of this was my fault. Mark didn't come home that night. He didn't answer my texts. He didn't pick up my calls. Around midnight, I finally got a one-line response. Staying at my brother's. Fine. Let him pout. Let him have his little drama. I went to bed in our big, empty bed and told myself I was glad for the space. But the next morning, the reality of the situation began to set in. Not with a bang, but with the quiet, clinical opening of the refrigerator door. 1 carton of milk, nearly empty. 3 eggs. A shriveled-up lemon. No lunch meat for the kids' sandwiches. No yogurt. No fruit. Normally, this wouldn't be a problem. It would be an excuse. A quick trip to Whole Foods. I'd fill the cart, swipe the card, and not even look at the total. It was just groceries. But this time, I froze. I couldn't go to Whole Foods. I couldn't just swipe the card. Mark would see it. After the fight about the watch, another $400 grocery bill would be like declaring war. My stomach twisted. For the first time in my adult life, I actually had to think about money. Not in an abstract let's save for a vacation kind of way, but in a very real, how am I going to feed my children today kind of way. I sat down at the kitchen table with my phone and opened the grocery store app. I started making a list, actually looking at the prices. $4.99 for a gallon of organic milk, $7 for a dozen eggs, $32 for the grass-fed ground beef Mark insisted on buying. The numbers swam before my eyes. This is what he dealt with. Every week. This constant, draining calculation. This was the weight he carried every time he sighed when he walked through the door. And in that moment, sitting there in my sun-drenched, designer kitchen, I didn't feel empathy. I felt disgust, and a deep simmering resentment. This wasn't supposed to be my life. I didn't sign up for this. I didn't marry a man, so I could stand in a grocery aisle comparing the price of peanut butter. I married him for security, for stability, for the freedom to not have to think about these things. He was the provider. That was the deal. An unspoken contract we both signed on our wedding day. And he had just breached it. He had failed, and he was dragging me down with him. My hand started to shake. My eyes burned, but I refused to cry. Crying was for victims. I wasn't a victim. I was better than this. But the thoughts, they were relentless. What if he can't find another job? What if the next one doesn't pay as well? What if we have to sell the house? That one hit me like a punch to the gut. This house. My beautiful house. I looked around at the custom-made drapes, the expensive rug, the gallery wall of family photos I'd spent a fortune framing. The thought of packing it all up, of downsizing to some cramped, soulless apartment, it made me feel physically ill. I imagined being one of those moms, the ones at Target who have to say, "No, sweetie, put it back. We can't afford that right now." The sheer humiliation of it, that life was not for me. It never had been, and I hated myself for thinking it. But the thought was there, ugly and undeniable. I made a mistake marrying him. My phone buzzed, shaking me out of my downward spiral. A text from Julian. "You disappeared yesterday. Everything okay?" His timing was impeccable. It was like he could sense my distress. I stared at his name on the screen. Julian, with his Porsche and his easy smile and his complete lack of financial anxiety. He represented everything I wanted, everything Mark was no longer capable of giving me. Safety, excitement, a life without price tags. I typed back a reply before I could second-guess myself. Long story. Not really. Could use a distraction. His response was immediate. "Lunch tomorrow? My treat." I looked around my empty kitchen, at the looming threat of a budget and a life of sacrifice. "I'd love that," I typed. As I hit send, I felt a strange sense of calm. It felt like I was finally taking back control. It felt like I was starting to build a lifeboat, just in case the ship really was sinking. Mark came home a few days later. He didn't apologize, and neither did I. We just coexisted. Two strangers sharing a mortgage. The tension was so thick you could taste it. He spent his days in the home office, the sound of his typing a constant, desperate click-clack. I spent my days trying to maintain the illusion of normalcy for the kids, all while my secret text conversations with Julian became more frequent, more intimate. He was my escape, a little window into a world where I was still Chloe, the fun, desirable woman, not Chloe, the broke project manager's wife. We had lunch. It was at a beautiful French bistro downtown. He didn't even look at the prices on the menu. He ordered a bottle of Sancerre like it was water. He listened to me complain about Mark, about my life, and he nodded sympathetically, his hand covering mine on the table. "A woman like you," he'd said, his voice a low purr, "should never have to worry about anything." And I drank it all in. A week after that lunch, it happened. The moment that everything truly shattered. I had just put the kids to bed. The house was quiet. I was walking past our bedroom when I heard a sound. A soft, muffled sound. A sniffle, followed by a choked sob. I froze, my hand on the hallway wall. It was coming from our room. It was Mark. Crying. Mark. My Mark. The man who prided himself on being a rock, on never showing weakness. The man who hadn't cried at his own father's funeral. He was in our bedroom, crying. I had never, in our 12 years together, heard him cry like that. A part of me, a small, forgotten part, felt a pang of something sharp. Pity? Concern? But it was quickly swallowed by a much stronger, colder emotion. Contempt. Curiosity got the better of me. I pushed the door open just a crack. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. His broad shoulders, the ones I used to feel so safe in, were shaking. He was trying to be quiet, to stifle the sounds, which somehow made it even more pathetic. "I don't know what to do," he whispered to himself, his voice broken. "I promised them. I promised her. I'd take care of us. And now? I can't. I'm a failure." My chest tightened. A good wife would have walked in. She would have wrapped her arms around him. She would have said, "We'll get through this together. We are not a failure." I was not a good wife. I stood there, a ghost in the doorway, and all I could think was, he's right. He is a failure. This weak, broken man crying on our bed, he wasn't the man I married. The man I married was strong, confident, capable. This was a stranger, an imposter, and he was going to drown me. I didn't do this. I didn't make him lose his job. I didn't make him weak. This wasn't my problem to fix. I wasn't a rehab center for broken men. I had my own life, my own future to think about, my children's future. They deserved a father who could provide, not one who hid in his room and cried. Slowly, silently, I backed away. I pulled the door until it clicked softly shut, sealing him in with his grief. My heart was pounding, but my mind was eerily calm. It was clear now. There was no coming back from this. I walked downstairs, my steps light. I sat on the expensive sofa he could no longer afford, and I pulled out my phone. I didn't scroll through Instagram. I didn't check my blog. I opened a new tab in my browser. I typed in the name of the best divorce lawyer in the city. Then, I opened my text with Julian. "You up?" He replied instantly. "Always for you. What's on your mind?" I looked up the stairs, toward the room where my husband was falling apart. I couldn't hear him anymore. I didn't want to. I typed back to Julian. "I think I'm finally ready to make a change." In that moment, leaving my husband wasn't just a possibility anymore. It was a plan. The weeks leading up to Christmas were a special kind of hell. The house was no longer a home. It was a cold war zone. We communicated through the kids, our words polite and clipped, each one coated in a thick layer of ice. Mark looked like he had aged 10 years. There were dark circles under his eyes, and he'd lost weight. He was trying. I'll give him that. He was on the phone constantly, networking, interviewing for jobs that were clearly beneath him. I'd overhear snippets. "Yes, I'm willing to relocate. The salary is negotiable. I can start immediately." It was desperate. And desperation is not an attractive quality in a man. Meanwhile, my own escape plan was solidifying. I had a secret consultation with the lawyer. She was sharp, expensive, and told me exactly what I wanted to hear. That I was entitled to half. That I deserved to be happy. I started meeting Julian more often. For coffee. For walks in the park. It was all very innocent on the surface. But underneath, there was a current of electricity. He was wooing me. He'd talk about his future. His business trips to Milan. His ski chalet in Aspen. And he'd always end with, "It's a shame I have no one to share it with." He was painting a picture of a life I wanted. A life I felt I deserved. He was my validation. Proof that I wasn't the crazy one. I was a desirable woman trapped in a failing marriage. Then came Christmas morning. It was the saddest Christmas I had ever experienced. The pile of gifts under the tree was pitifully small. The kids, bless their hearts, tried to be excited, but they were used to the big-ticket items. The iPads, the video game consoles, the giant Lego sets. This year, it was sweaters, books, and a few board games. I could see the disappointment in their eyes, even as they said, "Thank you, Mommy. Thank you, Daddy." It broke my heart, and my heart hardened against Mark. This was his fault. He sat on the couch, a forced smile on his face, looking completely defeated. There was nothing for me under the tree. Not a card. Not a box of chocolates. Nothing. He hadn't even tried. And that, for me, was the final confirmation. He had given up. On us. On everything. By the end of the night, I knew. I was done. I was 34 years old. I was not going to spend the prime of my life living like this, waiting for a man to maybe, possibly, get his act together. Life is too short to settle for a supporting role in someone else's tragedy. The first week of January, I had the papers drawn up. I waited until the kids were at my mother's house for the afternoon. I found Mark in his office, staring blankly at his laptop screen. I placed the thick manila envelope on the desk in front of him. He looked at it, then up at me. His eyes were full of a confusion that quickly morphed into dawning horror. "What is this, Chloe?" "I think you know," I said, my voice steady. I had rehearsed this. He opened the flap with trembling fingers and pulled out the top sheet. His eyes scanned the legal jargon. Petition for dissolution of marriage. All the color drained from his face. He looked like I had physically struck him. "So that's it?" he whispered, his voice hoarse. "After everything, you're just giving up?" "There's nothing left to give up on, Mark," I said, the words cold and clinical. "We've been over for a long time. You know it, and I know it." "And, because I lost my job?" he asked, a single tear tracing a path down his cheek. "That's what this is about? 12 years? And you're throwing it all away for money?" I could have told him the truth. That it was about the crying, the weakness, the contempt I felt, that it was about Julian and the life he promised. But that would make me the villain. So I lied. I chose a lie that would make him the villain instead. "No, Mark," I said, looking him dead in the eye. It's not because you lost your job. It's because I haven't loved you for a very, very long time. It was the cruelest thing I could have said. And it worked. The fight went out of his eyes. The hope. Everything. He just slumped in his chair, defeated. All right? He nodded slowly. All right, Chloe. That was it. No screaming. No begging. Just the quiet, hollow sound of a life breaking in two. As I walked out of that room, I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. The first month of freedom was intoxicating. I moved into my parents' guest room, telling them it was just for a little while until I get on my feet. The kids were confused, but kids are resilient. I told them Daddy needed some space. There was no budget, no one to answer to. If I wanted to buy a new dress, I bought it. The divorce settlement was generous. I felt like I could finally breathe again. I saw Julian constantly. The pretense was gone. We were dating. He'd pick me up in his Porsche, and we'd go to fancy dinners. He was charming. He was handsome. He was everything I thought I wanted. But the fantasy and the reality are two very different things. Julian loved the idea of me. He did not love the reality of me. The reality involved two small children, custody schedules, and PTA meetings. He was patient at first. But soon, the sighs started. You have the kids again this weekend? Can't your mom watch them? He never said it outright, but the message was clear. I came with baggage. Baggage he had no interest in carrying. The dates became less frequent. The texts became shorter. Then, one day, he just stopped replying. I had been a fun distraction, a conquest. I was not, and never would be, his future. The man I had torpedoed my marriage for didn't even want me. The months dragged on. I was still at my parents' house. My mom started dropping hints. You know, Chloe, the school district here isn't as good. Have you thought about updating your resume? It was humiliating. I was 35 years old, a single mother of two, living in my childhood bedroom. The La Vie de Chloe blog posts became less frequent. What was I going to post about? The thrill of finding discounted chicken at the grocery store? One rainy Tuesday afternoon, I was scrolling aimlessly through LinkedIn, a new form of self-torture, and that's when I saw it. A post from Mark's former colleague. It was a picture. A group of men in sharp suits, holding champagne flutes at some corporate event. And in the center of the photo, smiling wider and more confidently than I had seen him smile in years, was Mark. My Mark. The caption read, "So thrilled to welcome my old friend Mark Peterson to the team as our new Vice President of Operations. Big things ahead." Vice President. I felt the air leave my lungs. I clicked on Mark's new profile. It had been updated. The picture was new, too. It was just him, a professional headshot. He looked good, rested, happy. My eyes scanned his new job description, the impressive title, the prestigious company. My stomach twisted into a painful knot. I scrolled through the comments on the congratulatory post. Way to go, Mark. Well deserved. Couldn't have happened to a better guy. And then one comment that made my vision go blurry. Knew you'd land on your feet, man. $220K a year? They're lucky to have you. $220,000. I read the number 3 times. It couldn't be right. That was almost double what he had been making before. He hadn't just bounced back. He had catapulted into a different stratosphere. And then I saw her. In the comments, a woman named Jessica had replied to the main post. "So proud of you, my love," with a string of heart emojis. I clicked on her profile. Her profile picture was of her and Mark. They were on a boat, the sun setting behind them. She was beautiful, younger than me, with bright eyes and long, blonde hair, and she was leaning into him, her head on his shoulder, with a look of pure adoration. He had his arm wrapped tightly around her. He looked happy, genuinely, truly happy. I sat there, on my childhood bed, surrounded by my unpacked boxes, and I felt a wave of nausea so intense I thought I was going to be sick. It was a feeling I couldn't quite name. It was rage. It was regret. It was the ugly, bitter taste of jealousy. But mostly, it was the soul-crushing realization that I had lost. How did he do it? How did he end up with a better job, a bigger salary, and a beautiful new woman, while I was here, in this suburban purgatory? How did I lose at my own game? I had told myself a story where he was the failure and I was the smart one, escaping a sinking ship. But I had it all wrong. He wasn't sinking. He was just navigating a storm. A storm I was supposed to help him through, and instead of being his anchor, I had jumped overboard and into a flimsy lifeboat captained by a fool. I looked at the picture of him and Jessica again, the happy couple. I guess this is the part they don't show you in the level up videos. They don't tell you what to do when the man you left for dead gets his life together without you. They don't tell you what it feels like to realize you didn't walk away from a failure. You walked away from a comeback story, and you're not in it. I closed my laptop. The image of them on that boat was burned into my mind. I thought about the sad, empty space under our Christmas tree last year. I bet she got a Christmas gift this year. I bet it was spectacular.